Mark,
Okay.
so today you're going to talk a little bit about the AI capabilities that have been coming out with Microsoft and specifically around Copilot.
Yep.
So it's the Copilot covers quite a wide range of new components that Microsoft has been releasing over the last year. Some of it is focused more on the maker side of things, and some of it is more on the end user and how they're going to improve productivity in the day-to-day work. So what are you going to focus on today, Mark?
Today I'm going to focus on the maker side of it. So anyone who is particularly interested in the user side of it. But yeah, hopefully we'll do a follow-up session on the user side.
Absolutely. And I think it's big enough to justify 2 sessions, maybe even more, depending on how much we can cover within those first 2 sessions.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Mark from Capgemini, solution architect extraordinaire, Dynamics and Power Platform expert. Over to you.
Thanks, Rami. And yeah, thanks everyone for attending, both online and here in person. Hopefully you can hear me all okay on Teams, but shout if you can't.
All good.
And our lovely host will be able to help you. Okay. Yeah, my name's Mark Macrae. I originally from London, England, and now I've been in New Zealand about 5 years now. Work for Capgemini as a solution architect, and they're my passions: mountain biking, football, and retro computer games. I'm very retro, seeing as I'm getting older by the year. And that photo is probably a bit of a stretch. That was taken about when I first came to New Zealand about 5 years ago. Okay, today I'm just going to cover a brief overview of AI. It's a subject that's quite complex and is quite key to understand. So to lead into Copilot and what Copilot is about and trying to achieve. We'll talk a little bit about the key players that have led to Copilot or are part of the Copilot delivery. I'll do some demos, and then we'll talk a little bit about kind of the impact on our work lives, and without getting too deep into that, because that's a whole session in itself. Few caveats: I don't work for Microsoft, and I'm not an MVP, so I don't have special privileged access to anything. So this is purely, I guess, my findings from the time I've spent using Copilot and having a play around with it and listening to information on it as well. So yeah. Okay, first of all, I thought, can AI create the presentation for me? So I will just duck out and show you. So I'm assuming most of you have used ChatGPT or tried it to some degree. So I would type in something like, can you provide me with some slides for presentation on Copilot? So I get some information back, which will, on the surface of it, looks really good. I think, okay, that gives me a good outline. However, when you look into it in a bit more detail, it's talking specifically about Copilot for developers as part of GitHub. So I don't know if any developers in the room or online have used that. But that was kind of the first emergence of something called a Copilot was to help developers write code. And actually, this version of ChatGPT, it has a cutoff date of 2021. So it's not accessing the internet and therefore current information, such as Copilot 365 or for Power Platform, which has just been recently announced in the last few weeks, or months, sorry. So if I was to say, are you connected to the internet? Then no, it explains that it's got a cutoff date of September 2021. So all its knowledge is up to that point. But if there is this is ChatGPT version 3.5. There is a ChatGPT 4 available, which is connected to the internet, and you pay a subscription fee for that. All for community and everything, but I wasn't prepared to spend any money for you guys, so I haven't actually got a subscription for it. Okay, so there's some limitations there, but I just want to talk a little bit about AI and kind of a brief overview. And I just wanted to kind of go back to look at a history, I suppose, of where we've come from. So back in 1950, there was a guy called Alan Turing, who you've probably heard of with the Enigma code cracking for World War II, and probably seen the movie. He was a British mathematician, and he was famous for obviously breaking the Enigma code. But he kind of proposed, or kind of one of the early people that thought machines were capable of thinking like humans. And he created like this crude test, which was to ask questions of a machine and also have a human there and a machine. And if and basically if he couldn't guess which the machine or the human was answering the question, then that would pass the test, and that machine was capable of being human-like. And that was kind of the first kind of testing and thinking around that. We move on to the 1960s, and there was a MIT in America who wanted to demonstrate again the advancements of machines, and they created a program called ELIZA. And I just wanted to show you this. It was quite amusing. It's not very 1960s, but yeah, just a few.
Does it understand what it's doing in the sense that we do? It's easy to leap to false conclusions, as Professor Weizenbaum discovered when he created ELIZA. ELIZA is a computer program that anyone can converse with via the keyboard, and it'll reply on the screen. We've added human speech to make the conversation more clear.
Men are all alike.
In what way?
They're always bugging us about something or other.
Can you think of a specific example?
Well, my boyfriend made me come here.
Your boyfriend made you come here?
He says I'm depressed much of the time.
I'm sorry to hear that you're depressed.
It's true. I am unhappy.
Do you think coming here will help you not to be unhappy?
The computer's replies seem very understanding, but this program is merely triggered by
So I just thought that was quite amusing to share. But yeah, it shows how far we've come, I guess. But that was like very early days, and that kind of computer program had preloaded all of the answers to the questions that it thought it could possibly be asked. So, and it had limited memory and so forth. If we move on to 1997, there was the chess grandmaster at the time had a game of chess with a computer. We had a few games, and got very grumpy that when the computer beat him and stormed out of the room. And that kind of showed again that how far computers had come up to that point. We're able to process thousands of possible moves. We got the vacuum cleaners that some of you may have used and got annoyed with or quite enjoy. And then we've got, I couldn't believe it was 2011 that these virtual assistants came out, but they did. They've been around for quite some time. Most of us have one of those in our homes. And that kind of leads us to today. I think the Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, famously said that the virtual assistants of, such as Siri and Amazon Alexa are just dumb. They're kind of compared to what we have today. So again, very limited in what they can do and what they're processing in terms of AI. And we all famously have some kind of connection with some movies that kind of fantasize about AI, for good or for bad. It's important to kind of understand some definitions, I guess. So there's AI, which is the kind of the overall field of computer science. And And then a subset of that would be machine learning. So able to teach machines to get better at understanding what you want them to do. And then we have something called generative AI, which is really another subset of AI that allows you to create content, if you like, text or images via some natural language prompts. And I guess what we're talking about with Copilot is predominantly generative AI. We're kind of trying to generate some kind of Word document or an app or a website or whatever it might be with our natural language prompts. And also, it's key to understand the heart of a lot of this is something called a large language model. And this is about training a machine. What we're trying to do is train a machine to understand what, our language and get the machine to do something for us. So if you think about a Power App, we would like to say something like, can you create me an app to capture holiday requests? And for it to understand what you want it to do and follow out the instructions, so build the app, so forth. Back in the 1960s, when you had the ELIZA, it was really just understanding words. So it was just, text and letters and words and trying to interpret that. Whereas large language models go that one step further and add meaning and connection with words and context around it. So that statement, the old man's glasses are filled with, what would be some ideas that pop into your head? Anyone? Beer, yeah. So I've evolved into whiskey. But yeah, the old man's glasses could be filled with whiskey, but they could also be filled with tears. If we think about glasses, spectacles that you wear. So large language models have to understand the context, and the context goes with sometimes just your understanding of the world. So a computer would not necessarily come up with that, but a human does, because we have experience. Especially an old man has more experience than others, but we have, we have the understanding that they could be filled with tears or drinks or whatever. And that's the concept of a large language model, and that takes a lot of power, I suppose, to compute all of that, which we'll come on to. So key players with Copilot. First of all, we have OpenAI, which is a research company that essentially have created the ChatGPT or the GPT-4 model that we use with ChatGPT. They also have created other AI models to create images and music and so forth. ChatGPT is the famous one because that's kind of what kind of broke the internet a few months ago, when people started to discover it and find out what it could do. They OpenAI are a responsible company, I suppose. They promote responsible AI development and address all the associated risks with AI. And if you think about when the internet first came out, sort of back in the late 90s, early 90s, again, the internet could be used for good purposes, honest purposes, and also dishonest purposes. And it's the same with AI. So there are huge risks associated with AI. OpenAI are a kind of an organization that promote positive and responsible usage of it. Then we obviously have Microsoft. So OpenAI and Microsoft have a partnership. OpenAI are using Azure as their preferred cloud platform to host their models, and have also granted Microsoft like an exclusive license to commercialize their models, and hence Copilot. So yeah, you'll go online and you'll use ChatGPT-4. That's kind of the raw power of the model, but Copilot is a kind of a refined model that's kind of enterprise ready for your business purposes. So Copilot was born from this partnership, essentially. And another key player is that kind of company that I guess I was familiar with back in the 90s, with PCs and graphics cards. But NVIDIA have evolved to become a key player in AI. So they power the AI revolution, if you like, with their super chips. So their latest kind of H100 chip has 80 billion transistors. I think because I'm a retro computer geek, I go back to like ZX Spectrums. Back in the 80s, they had something like 1,000 or 2,000 transistors in their core CPU. These chips have 80 billion transistors and a memory bandwidth of 3 terabytes a second. So which is that's RAM. So that's pretty, kind of breathtaking, really. Every couple of years, a new generation comes out, which is X times faster than the last generation. But all of this is powering what we are able to do today. There has been a worldwide chip shortage for quite a few years now, and that's kind of stunted a bit of the development. And as a result, like the previews, if you like, of Copilot are still only available in the US region, and I think that's partly due to that. Another player is the Microsoft Graph. So most of you probably, techies in the room, will understand what the graph is, and you'll use the Graph API to do things. The graph is like a network of all of your communications that are happening behind the tools, the productivity tools that you're using. So when you open an email, or you read a document, or you spell check something, or you message someone on Teams, there's all of these messages and data that's going on in the background. And that network of data is kind of the material, the web of material that's used for Copilot to be able to understand what it wants you to do and get that context of your daily life, or your working life. There is something called a semantic index for Copilot, and that is something that is kind of will crawl around in your Microsoft Graph and almost index the data in there ready for when you want to prompt and ask Copilot something. So if you think about a traditional search engine, you would need to index that in that search engine, or the content for your search engine to be able to respond to queries. And it's a similar kind of idea, but kind of a continuous index and something that's happening. So this is rolling out at the moment, and predominantly for, I think it's E3 and E5 customers, and business standard and premium, so Microsoft 365 customers. Billions of vectors served in tens of milliseconds effectively. And I just wanted to, this video is only about a minute long or so, so I just wanted to share that too, because it explains it a lot better than I can.
Semantic Index for Copilot creates a sophisticated map of your personal and company data, identifying relationships and making important connections. In fact, your brain works like a semantic index by encoding multiple words and pictures to create a larger conceptual map of information. For example, a semantic map of what the average person knows about elephants would include things like elephants have trunks, and elephants travel in herds, and elephants live in Africa. Today, people are mostly familiar with keyword search, which relies on exact words and phrases. So when you search for March sales report, you get a list of documents that include exactly those 3 words. But a semantic index understands that sales reports are produced by Kelly on the finance team and published each month as an Excel file. And it encodes all of these concepts and relationships between concepts in vectors in the index. Semantic Index for Copilot analyzes your data. That's all your emails, documents, calendar, chats, and more in the Microsoft Graph, and uses a large language model, or LLM, to map all your content and the relationships between your content and you, searching through billions of vectors to find the most relevant results in milliseconds. It's what enables Microsoft 365 Copilot to deliver personalized, relevant, and actionable responses, and do so in a secure, compliant, privacy-preserving way. Semantic Index for Copilot enables every organization to be AI ready. Semantic
Okay, so that brings us to Copilot itself, or Copilots, as I put it, because there are kind of multiple Copilots. There's a Copilot in every app, if you like, or that's the idea, that in every productivity app that you use, whether it's Word, whether it's Excel, Power Apps, Power Automate, Windows, there will be a Copilot to help you. And think of it as an expert on tap almost. What I understand at the moment in terms of kind of pricing, and the more educated people in the room can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is some pricing announced for Microsoft 365, so it's kind of like the Office suite, if you like, predominantly. Certain customers, E3, E5, Business Standard and Premium, will have that available to them at $30 per month. I haven't seen any pricing for Power Platform yet, or Windows or anything like that. So, and my Microsoft host is agreeing with me.
Nothing. So Charles and Marta confirmed that we're not charging for Copilot with the premium licenses. So things like Power Apps Premium, Dynamics 365 enterprise licenses, you'll get it included. That's for the moment.
Okay.
I'll let you know if it changes.
Yeah, the other thing that I've heard is that if it's a maker support, then there probably won't be any licenses associated with it, because they want to encourage productivity when it comes to the maker experience.
Yeah.
End user is different, because then it's larger volumes and it's used for other purposes.
Okay. Thanks, guys. So the picture there on the right is the kind of the icon for Power Apps for Copilot for GitHub. Those of you kind of were around in the 90s might remember the Crazy Frog guy. Reminds me of that. Okay, I've got some slides to go through all of the different Power Apps or apps within Power Platform and kind of describe it, but in the interest of time, I think I'm just going to go into the demos now and show you. So I'm just going to break out of here. So first thing to note is that I've created an environment in the US region. Okay, so that allows me to have the Copilot preview stuff available. And it's just a trial environment that I've set up. So if you do have a Power Platform tenant, then you create a new environment. Make sure it's set to US region, then you'll get access to the Copilot stuff and you can have a play around. I found that all of the Copilot settings are switched on by default when I did that. Okay, so if we start with Power Apps, I thought I would try to. My idea with this was to kind of have a theme, I suppose, and join it all up, but I didn't really have the time to do it properly. So, but I thought if I trying to create a leave request app in Power Apps, and then a kind of a flow, I guess, in Power Automate as a starting point. So I've got my Copilot prompt here. So I'm going to fix my prompts here. So I'm going to ask it to create an app that captures leave requests. So you can see the Copilot kind of navigation pane on the right-hand side. And like a chat, there's field prompts. That's what I've asked it to do, and it's currently thinking about it. So it's created a table for me called leave request, and it's going to generate some columns it thinks is appropriate. So we've got a leave type, we've got a start and end date, we've got a reason, and so forth. So it's a good start. I don't really need an ID column, I don't think. So I'm going to ask it to remove. I need to put my glasses on. Remove ID. And as I did this, like some of these things, I would be quicker for me just to kind of select the column and delete it. But for the purposes of this, I'm showing you kind of what's possible. So it's done that for me. I'm going to make. I'm going to ask it to name the primary column for me, just so I've got a good index. Okay, now it's given me some sample data in there, and I could ask it to kind of add some more sample data. So, I mean, that gives me a good idea of what the table is going to look like. But actually, if I was doing something slightly different, like I was messing around with other apps as well, and I thought, I could do with some different data, or ask it to put some data in a different region for me, or something like that. So it hasn't actually added any more that time. Sometimes it does add extra rows, but for some reason, because I'm in a demo, it's not done it for me. But it shows that it's it's not quite 100% there. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to create the app. It doesn't give me a choice of what type of app to create, so it's going to create me a Canvas app. Isn't that great? Yeah. Okay, let's try again.
Maybe you need to add a primary key.
I think it's maybe I need to just kind of exit the Teams meeting and pretend I'm just at home in my room, just fresh.
It knows. Yeah. It's not fair.
Smart. It's real smart, that's not.
Okay, let's try again, because I've literally done this like multiple times and it's been no bother at all. I'm not going to do the primary key thing, but let's just remove ID, because that would become a pain for me.
And you do multiple requests at once.
Yeah, you can, yeah. Let's I'll show you that in the Power Automate demo. Try again, see if we can create the app this time.
Does it look for existing tables? So if you've already made one called leaf requests, would it go and look and say, hey, already one literally with the same name?
That's a very good question. And because I've done this multiple times, yeah, it doesn't. So I've noticed that actually it just creates like another table with a different kind of view to it behind the scenes. So it doesn't say, hey, you've already got a table called leaf requests. Do you want to use this one? No, I noticed that it didn't pick that up for me.
And that's good feedback. And a lot of people have been asking that, because the context is not always starting from scratch. You've got an environment, you just want to use Copilot to expedite your productivity or make you more productive. You want to understand your environment and to build on top of that. Yeah. So it's a good use case, but maybe in the next release.
In your description, could you say, I want to use this table?
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Reference something existing, or even like redirect it. So it starts by creating a new table, and you would say, hey, consider using that table, and it would adapt to that.
Or tell it to use a solution that exists.
Yeah, an existing solution. Yeah.
The use case at the moment is very much about rapid prototyping as opposed to building properly.
Yeah. But solutions is a different discussion.
Yeah.
It's like, where's that evolve?
So I'm going to ask it now just to create. So I've got my basic screen here. I'm going to ask it for a confirmation screen so that if I've added a new leave request, it'll say, okay, thanks for submitting that. When you get the waiting pop up, you know it's kind of accepted what you wanted it to do. So you can see it's created a confirmation, it's added a label, and it's changed the text. You can see it's put it up there, and you know it's not that looking that great. But if I was to say something, so I tried to say something like place the label in the center of the screen. You can see it didn't quite understand that or interpret that, so it's created me a new label there. So I'll do that myself. I'm going to change the font to 16 and bold. So also find if you've got multiple things on the screen, obviously you've got to select the control that you want it to update, or be explicit about which control you want it to update. Okay. So I'm now asking it to add a new screen with an edit form connected to leave requests, which is my data source table that it created. And I had quite a few attempts at this to get it to understand what I wanted it to do. So there's my kind of edit screen, if you like. And so you can see it's created a form, and it did actually kind of connect that up. So you can see it's changed the data source there for me. I find that I've had to kind of put things in quotes or single quotes to get it to kind of recognize what I've done, or what I want it to do, rather. I asked it to do things like, okay, change the background color. To blue. I found these sort of requests a bit unsuccessful. Didn't quite. I thought, you know, you've got your background color up here, and you can just change that, but it didn't quite kind of interpret that for me as I would. No, probably the preview is probably like a few versions behind what's coming. So. Okay, then I'm going to add a submit button. Well, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to Power Automate, because I realise we're doing for time. So I'm going to just, hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour for Power Apps anyway. And if we move on to Power Automate, we have a similar experience. So we've got our kind of, let's start with Copilot in the front and centre. So here I was going to create like a flow that, like an approval flow basically for my leave requests that when I clicked submit on my app, would kick in. So so I'm going to ask it basically when records created in my leave requests app start and wait for an approval from me. So it's detected that I want to do there's some kind of trigger, and it's picked out Dataverse is the trigger. And it also knows that I want to start and wait for an approval. So it's picked out like an approval connector for me. So that's a good start. I'm going to go next. The next step will be to make sure my connections are kind of authenticated and so forth. Now it's asking me to just be a bit more specific about what I want to connect to. So there's my multiple leave request tables. And I'm going to say first to respond and create my flow. And then you'll see that I've got my Copilot panel on the right, and I've got my flow kind of experience here. So next thing I'm going to do is just going to update the title parameter to leave approval. So if I select my leave connect and my approval action, I've got quite a few properties that it hasn't filled in. So although I said I wanted to approve Mark Macrae to approve, it hasn't kind of automatically set that for me. So it's updated that action for me. So if I click on there, I can see the title's gone in there. Now I want to say, okay, I want assigned to Mark. So if I say set assigned to Mark, so obviously I think, okay, I better put that in quotes for it to understand. There's only one Mark in the business, so I was hoping it was going to pick it out for me. So it says it's updated that action, but it's just put Mark in there. So I don't think that's going to work. So I'm going to just set that to be my actual email address. Hopefully I'm coming through clearly on the Teams, because I realise that when I'm doing demos, my voice goes down and I concentrate.
Good, I can hear.
Okay, then I say if the approved, so now I want to kind of do some conditional on the approval. So I wanted to say if approved, update the status to approved. So it's going away and thinking about it. Didn't understand that. When I did that last time, that exact statement, I'm going to select that and then ask it. So I've kind of get that a few times. Sometimes it will answer the question for me. Sometimes it will put, last time it put a conditional logic. It actually had made an assumption that I was going to connect to SharePoint and update the approval status of my SharePoint file, which I don't have. So I was just wanted to point that out. But you kind of, hopefully you get the idea there that, again, that Copilot is a starting point for you. Sometimes you're going to have to, all the time, you're going to have to refine what it's doing and check what it's doing. But it's a good start, and I can see how it's going to evolve. At the moment, it's quite raw, and obviously the trials and feedback that Microsoft are getting through testing and so forth is going to going to refine this a lot more, and this is probably quite an early version that I'm using. I was going to step into virtual agents. Now, with virtual agents, there's quite a lot of new features around AI. If I actually go into let's create a new chatbot. This one, sport platform user group. Now, one of the things I can do is I can provide a website or internal content also. But I'm going to provide a website today for content that if someone asks a question of my chatbot and it's like a fallback option, so I haven't created a topic for it and I haven't created an answer structure for it, then my bot can go off to the website and see if it can find websites and see if it can find the information from there. So that's a real good fallback option. And obviously you want to use trusted sources, but this will give you, essentially, in a raw sense, you could say, okay, my chatbot is going to be served by, and I'm going to use BBC Sport because I'm British, but
Wikipedia would be hilarious.
yeah,
It's cheating. Can't do that.
So that
okay. So I'm pointing at the BBC Sport website. I'm going to create my bot. There's no, I haven't found any 90s equivalent for the chatbot guy.
With the websites you can put in there, there are now sites declaring that they're putting the stop ChatGPT from scraping them. Would that also be effective? The BBC turned around and said, no, we don't want the AI scraping us. Would that stop this working?
Potentially, yeah. I did wonder what was the impact on as a bot scraping.
The OpenAI stuff isn't scraping. What it's doing is it's leveraging the Bing index. So they'd have to stop Bing indexing them.
Okay.
Which would be interesting. But yeah, so it's essentially what it's doing is it's taking your query, passing it through ChatGPT with Bing as the backup, and then it's returning those results.
Yeah, interesting. So if I look at on the settings for the bot, I've got AI capabilities here, and I can add websites, public websites for conversational boosting. We've got the ability to add other sources. So again, in preview mode, you can add things like your Dataverse environment or your SharePoint document to provide answers also. I can upload just a document, if you like, as a source to provide kind of source for FAQs. There's also options here for bot tone coming soon, so I can make my bot like a friendly bot or a empathetic bot.
You say sarcastic's an option.
It's a custom option there. You can build it yourself.
Yeah.
Grumpy developer bot.
Have you turned it off and on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could get them.
Yeah. So, okay, so I haven't created any new topics specifically on sport. So I'm going to ask it a question. Who is PFA, Professional Football Association, Men's Player of the Year? So I'm just testing this bot now, as if I was a member of the public. So it's told me that Man City's Eric Haaland is actually PFA Men's Player of the Year, and if I was to go to that link, there's the there's the news article about it. So that just shows kind of without loading it with any topics or information, then I've actually got some good source of information for my bot already out the box without doing too much at all. Now, if I do want to create a topic, I've now got the option to create a new topic with Copilot. So I can create a topic called, say, football. And I can ask it something basic like, okay, so ask a user what their favourite football team is. Ask them if they'd like to hear a fact about the Premier League. So your favourite football team is West Ham. This is where Copilot's probably going to spit it back at me now. Okay. So you can see it's built for me like some phrases, some input phrases, trigger phrases, if you like. It's structured those questions for me, the conditions. So if you before Copilot, you'd have to kind of structure all of this yourself. Take quite a long time to set up a topic. So it's a really good head start. There is one error there I've noticed, so I'm just going to correct that. And then pretty much I'm good to go. So I'm going to save that.
This one looks so much better.
Yeah, I thought out of all of the Power Apps, and I had a play with Power BI, which I'm going to show today, and I had a play with Power Pages, which I'm not going to show today because I just don't really have the time now. I thought this was the most advanced kind of area, Copilot, if you like, the one that seemed to be the slickest so far with this version that I'm using anyway. I'm going to ask it. Oh yeah, I'm going to ask it. Did Medvedev win? Okay, so when I asked that same question of the same bot or equivalent bot this morning, they come back and told me that no, Medvedev didn't win the PFA Men's Player of the Year award, but he did win a match in the US Open. So it's kind of, again, that context. He's not sure what context I was asking it because previously I'd asked it about the football. So it's got a bit confused, saying, okay, are you talking about the football still? If you're talking about tennis, then here you go. But if I ask it something about, okay, tell me about football. My favourite team is West Ham. Yes, I would. So it's also plucked some fact from West Ham. I haven't told it anything about West Ham, but it's plucked out that they're the only team to have been relegated 3 times since 1992, which I knew, but I've been there. But yeah, so you can see with Power Virtual Agents how quickly that will be. Now, one of the what I was going to show you if I did at the time was going to Power Pages, and I could add that bot to a portal for a member of public to use pretty easily and pretty much straight away. I could also add that bot to my Power App that I created earlier. So all of these things are kind of coming together and joining up. And the idea of just, within probably 20 minutes, creating, quite a bit towards quite a bit of material to use, it again shows how Copilot can help you as the maker. When I was a developer years ago, I had this guy who was my senior, and he would just write a few lines of code and then he'd chuck it to me and he'd say, 90% done. Can you have that for me finished up for tomorrow morning? And then it would take like about 6 months to finish it properly and write the code properly and test it and everything else. I kind of feel like Copilot is my kind of grumpy developer from the 90s. Okay, I just wanted to jump into a couple of slides to finish off. Hopefully those demos give you a flavour of what it can do, what it can't do, and also give you a starting point to start playing around with it for yourself. So I won't discuss all of these. So what impact would it have? Now Microsoft have surveyed 31,000 people, and the results of that survey are available via that link there. It's called Will AI Fix Work? And if any of you have read it, but it's a good read and worth having a dwell over that. Essentially, the results are that essentially, yes, it will. So we're all gradually burdened with this digital debt. So everyone, as I suppose, as more data gets pumped our way, more information, more messages across multiple channels, emails, Teams, huge documents to read and digest, long emails sent at 10:30 in the night to digest before the morning, RFPs to respond to, reams of code to write. We're all kind of getting burdened and stressed out by this digital debt, and it's costing us innovation because humans, I guess, are more valuable in thinking and coming up with ideas rather than, I guess, trawling through and trying to understand reams of data. There is this kind of idea of an AI employee alliance where most employees are kind of welcoming of AI and want AI to help them with their jobs and relieve them of this debt, help them get through their daily lives a lot quicker and easier. The results of, there's one chart there on the right which kind of shows that kind of scale or that balance of most of us are kind of spend most of our days, 57% of our time, if you like, in communications, talking about stuff that we should be doing or discussing things as opposed to creating and delivering things. So that's where Copilot can help us. Copilot can help us. We can continue potentially to talk about the ideas and get Copilot to do the do for us. And we spend the time reviewing. If you've ever had to write a document, it's a lot harder to write it from scratch than it is to review something that someone's done for you. So get Copilot to do the grunt work. You come in and start reviewing. There are all questions about bias and, is the content loaded in some way or biased in some way? That's something that we have to look out for over the coming years. And also think about the skill sets that we've got now and the skill sets that we will need in a few years' time. So we're talking about being, analytical judgment. I've got that kind of GCSW, Google Certified Search Writer. Some of you now will think, oh, I'm better at searching Google than you are. Or I've searched Google and I can't find it. And then someone else comes along, like my wife will come along and say, oh, I've just searched this and it's at the top of the tree. And that's because her search prompts has been way more concise or accurate than mine. And it would be the same with AI. Getting Copilot to do stuff, you'll find you'll be a lot more productive with Copilot if you ask things in a certain way. And there's the sort of skill sets that we will be looking to hone over the coming years. Also, as we're in Wellington, it's suitable to talk about government. So recently in July, there was the Chief Privacy Officer released some reports, or a report, about generative AI and the impact on government. And there's some of the key highlights there. So public servants won't be able to avoid Gen AI even if they wanted to. So it's coming, whether you like it or not. There are some guidelines around it. And I think every government agency to some degree has been kind of tasked with coming up with at least a policy. use policy. So that's something that's going on now. And if you think about, I use the word revolution, but I think it is something that will be a revolution to us, like the internet was. And if you think about something like the Industrial Revolution, which kind of took 150 years to happen, kind of experts, I suppose, are saying that this revolution will happen within the next 2 to 5 years. So it's something, probably that's the last thought to kind of leave on. And yeah, hopefully all of you from the presentation have kind of got a good understanding of AI and good understanding of how Copilot's being used and what's coming. And I'm sure Rami will provide the slides to you, and there'll be some references in there too for you to follow up on. But yeah, I don't know if do we have time for any questions, or are we going to wrap up?
Yeah, we have time for questions. There are none online, but any questions from? So clear, Mark?
That was me walking off the end of the pier like earlier in the week because I was just snowed under with work and this presentation. Yeah,
good. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah.
Definitely room for another maker session. I think I really like the idea of embedding like the entire ecosystem, bringing something from the Power Virtual Agent into Power Pages. Power Pages also having Copilot capabilities where you can generate content, forms, and so on. And then you didn't show the Power BI stuff, which I was really excited about. I think Power BI is a whole world by itself because they've been using natural language for quite a while. And the things that you can do with it is absolutely phenomenal. So maybe that will be the focus for our next session before we go back to the end user stuff.
Sounds good. I think each one of those could probably be deep dived into a session on their own almost.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and hopefully we'll see you next time.